My entitled neighbors constantly make noise every single Friday night as they party until early hours into the morning. And after dealing with this for so many weeks, as well as calling security and the police, I finally made a complaint at the main office, only for them to turn it around and try to blame me for all the noise that was being made. But once I decided to move out, so did most of my neighbors in my apartment complex, causing them to lose well over $35,000 a month as a result. Here's what happened. Okay, so this was 16 years ago. I lived in these apartments going on 3 years, and I was happy there. I had wonderful neighbors. I was always respectful to my neighbors next to me and below me by being quiet in the evenings, and my neighbors deeply appreciated it. Then we had some new renters come in across the parking lot, this being the same complex, and about every Friday night, they would have some kind of party. I lived in Southern California, and most nights the air is calm, so sound traveled like an amphitheater. I also then had my youngest son, who was just a baby. From 11 o'clock p.m. until 3 o'clock in the morning, all you could hear was them talking. They'd be laughing and screaming like they were standing right next to your bed. And yes, the windows were closed. About the fourth weekend, I would call security. They would go talk to them with very little help, but next weekend it was the same thing over again. I finally went over and told them to quit as they were way too loud, but they just laughed and kept going with their noise. Even their next door neighbor stepped in and told them to be quiet, but finally we started calling the cops. The next rent payment, I went to the apartment office and complained as I made the payment, and the office responded by saying that I was the problem. Well, at this point, I was done. I started looking around and decided to buy a home, and the following week, I made an offer and it was accepted. The office staff told me that they were happy to see me go, as they claimed I was the problem on these party nights. Well, after 6 weeks of closing, I pack up and I move out, with my oldest son coming to help me out. As we were loading up, one of my neighbors who lived next to my apartment said that they envied me, as they too were tired of our partying neighbors. The neighbor next door to the party group yells out to me and said, "Good riddance." I just rolled my eyes, and the nice neighbor asked her what her problem was, as the only disturbance in the area was her neighbor, as they had all their parties all the time. Well, 2 months go by, and I drove by the apartments to find out that every single renter in my building and half from the building next to mine were all vacant. Everybody moved out because of the party group, and the apartment complex finally evicted the renters who were partying every single weekend. I guess losing one renter was okay, but 16 apartments vacant because of them was too much, and this was about $35,000 a month. I spoke with a couple of my old neighbors, and I found out when they gave their notice to end their lease, the apartment managers tried talking them into staying. They told them that they were done with the neighbors who partied all the time. Now, it did take them a few months to get new renters in their establishment, but it was probably especially hard after all the negative reviews that they got. And in the end, moving out was completely worth it. The funny thing is, every time I saw the office manager, she would tell me what a great tenant I was. Always paid my rent on time, my home was always clean, I never had a complaint from any other neighbor, and this was literally for 3 years. And I'm honestly wondering if the problem renters were like friends or family or something like that, because the best revenge was that when I moved out, so did everybody else, and they all said the same thing that I did. They're leaving because of the noise of that one apartment. Wow, that apartment complex and their managers are completely out of line. They seriously try to act like you were the problem with all this noise. Like, are these people deaf or something? There's no way that's coming from your apartment. You just happen to be the only person actually saying something about it, and somehow that makes you the bad guy? Like, what is going on right now? And I think I'm right there with the original poster. They had to have been like a friend or some family member or something like that, because no apartment complex I've ever lived in would ever put up with that for longer than like the occasional like one-off weekend. But outside of a very obvious holiday, there's no way anybody should ever have to put up with that. So I not only don't blame you for moving out, but I also don't blame you for complaining, because the noise these people were making was completely uncalled for, and you do not deserve to live like that in the slightest. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My entitled lazy coworker requests that I move his bike to the warehouse while also making sure that I don't get any dirt on the tires, as he wants to keep it new for as long as possible. So I decide to maliciously comply by putting it at the top of a very large shelf, completely out of his reach when he tried to retrieve it. Here's what happened. So I've worked at an outdoor retail store for a little over 2 years now. The employee turnover rate at my job is pretty high, with most only lasting a few months. And as such, I have become one of the more knowledgeable employees, and I work primarily in the bike shop. Now, the bike shop manager also also happens to be a head bike tech, meaning he is often busy repairing and building bikes. He has taken a liking to me, and as such, I do most of the part ordering, repair check-ins, and restocking and merchandising of the department floor. One of the few employees who has been working longer than me bought himself a brand new fat bike last spring. He lives in a small apartment, and so he stores his bike at the shop, as the bike shop manager and the store owner allows it. However, it is meant to be stored in the warehouse and not on the shop floor itself. Well, one day we get a large order of bikes that we wanted to put on the floor. I went and asked this employee if he could move his bike to the warehouse or if I could just do it for him. He told me, yes, you can bring it to the warehouse, but I don't want any dirt on my tires. It needs to stay shiny and clean for the winter. Also, please put it in a corner or something where it won't get dinged up and scratched. Well, I am a kind and accommodating coworker. However, I don't fancy having to carry this large bike the 500 feet or so over to the warehouse. So I decided that I'd make sure that no one would scratch his bike. In our warehouse, half of it is dedicated to backstock, and the other half has our paddle sports department. In the back stock side, half of that is large shelves that you would most likely see at Costco or other large grocery stores, and the other is bike racks for our stock that won't fit on the floor. The top of these shelves are usually left empty, as we don't have a forklift, and there usually isn't enough merchandise to facilitate needing that extra space. So this leaves about 20 feet open off the ground where my malicious compliance can take place. Very carefully, I climb the ladder to the top of the shelf, carrying his bike on my back. Once up there, I carefully tied it to the post that was left up there, and I stood it up on some cardboard boxes so that I wouldn't dirty any of the tires. I then climbed down and I moved the ladder. Then I continued my work and finished the merchandising. My bike shop owner manager has a great sense of humor, and so when he went to the warehouse to grab a bike in for repairs, he just about lost it when he saw what I had done with the bike. He came back into the store laughing his head off and agreed that it was a justly earned prank. My coworker, on the other hand, who owned the bike, did not find it quite as funny. He is shorter than me, so he could not reach high enough when he was on top of the ladder to get it down. When I left in the fall for school, it was still up there, and I imagine he will have to get another coworker to try and get it down. That's a really funny way of getting back at a coworker. You didn't damage his property or anything like that, but you definitely made things a lot harder when it comes to him getting his bike back. So the next time this guy brings his bike to work, hopefully he can be responsible and move his stuff where it needs to go, because otherwise it might end up in another place that he cannot reach. Today, I messed up by potentially losing my entire friend group, all because of a stupid mistake, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So for a bit of context, I'm an 18-year-old male, and I've always been a person who doesn't go out much, and I can easily spend days and even weeks not talking to anyone regularly. When I was younger, I used to be very shy and quiet, to the point where people thought I was a mute. I'm more vocal now, and noticeably more confident, but I feel like a completely different person to myself as little as 2 years ago. I feel like I found my identity and all of the things that I enjoy in life. I have a past of not keeping in contact with school friends after we've separated, both in primary and secondary school. I used to be good friends with quite a few people, and ever since we left, we haven't communicated once. I can understand if people want to move on, like a new chapter in their life, but I'm familiar with this feeling of losing people that I thought were once my good friends. So this brings me to about 7 months ago. I had been doing my A-levels for 2 years and was coming up to my final exams. During A-levels, I really got to know some people and was good friends with quite a large group of people. As the end of A-levels was coming up, I was reminded of losing friends and was certain that it wasn't going to happen again. They were very kind and supportive of me, and we all were pretty close as a friend group. Some of these people I had known for over 6 years all the way through high school. It was the last day of our exams, which was also my birthday. I had mentioned that it was my birthday several days beforehand, and one of them even put it in their calendar to remember. I go in, I do the exam, and afterwards I see my friends. There is no mention of my birthday or anything like that, and I'm honestly fine with that. A few hours pass by and I casually bring it up, and they say to me, "Oh, is it your birthday? I didn't realize." And we carry on as if nothing happened. Normally, I don't care much about my birthdays, but this did put a sour taste in my mouth. Well, after this, it was summer holiday, and I know we will all inevitably go to different universities, and we won't see much of each other. So I decided to try and spend a week off of any social media, namely Instagram, Twitter, or Reddit, just so I don't waste my weeks away endlessly scrolling. Well, a week turned into a month, then 3 months, and so on. I paid absolutely no attention to any social media, but wondered why literally no one had messaged me in that time. My friends have my WhatsApp and number, so they could have easily called me, but they didn't. Fast forward, and it's now about 5 months of no social media, and I'm about to go to university. I decide to go on Instagram because I would inevitably add some people from university, and when I go on, I see I have 9 message notifications. I think to myself, what happened? Why did they not show up? Suddenly, I was mentally freaking out because I've ghosted everyone that I know. I feel like a scumbag because my friends probably wanted to check up with me, but I completely ghosted them as if I disappeared off the face of the earth. I then check my settings on Instagram for notifications and I see that they are turned off. I think to myself, wait, when did this happen? But suddenly it all comes back to me. I had turned off notifications on Instagram so that I could focus on my exams, and I just never turned them back on. So because of this idiotic move, I have potentially burned all bridges with my entire friend group. I still haven't replied to them purely because I feel so much guilt that I don't want to remind them that I wronged them so badly. One friend messaged me somewhat recently asking how university is going, so maybe I still have a chance of continuing to speak with them. I know I'm probably not going to see the majority of the people I knew ever again, since some have went to live in other countries, but I feel I should at least apologize for doing this. I feel like they wouldn't accept my reasoning. Am I overthinking this? If I just respond casually with a quick apology for not replying on time, will they forgive me at all? What should I do? Honestly, in my opinion, I think you might be overthinking this a little bit too much. If these people are your friends, they will welcome you back with open arms. If they hold a grudge or try to hold this over your head, all because of a silly mistake, in my opinion, would be so bad and would probably shed some light on if they really are good friends or not. So in my opinion, I would just message them and say, hey, sorry about that, and then just give a very quick, easy explanation as to what you've been up to the past 6 months. Because if they are your friends, then they really will be okay with you stepping back into their lives. Am I the jerk for digging in my heels and refusing to invite my estranged dad and his wife to my wedding? Because after the way they treated me growing up, I now literally don't want anything to do with them. And I'm seriously at such a crossroads and I don't know what to do. Here's what happened. I'm a 30-year-old female getting married this year, and the wedding is going to be smaller. So those we want to invite know when the wedding will take place and are confirmed to be free. Invites will go out in the summer, but unofficially, the people who will be invited have been invited. This was because it was important for us to have those closest to us present, and we didn't want a hugely expensive wedding. This has become a problem because I did invite my paternal grandmother, and she has a relationship with my estranged father while I do not. Now, for a bit of background, when my brother and I were 4 years old, we lost our mom. Our mom's twin sister helped our dad out a lot after mom died, and we actually lived with her for 7 to 8 months while our dad was spiraling and losing control of himself. She was there for our first day of school. She fed us and clothed us and protected us a lot during the period we lived with her, and once dad pulled himself together and took us back, she was still the person taking care of us after school and on Saturdays or Sundays when our dad would work. She was essential to us. She and mom were orphans, so it was just her for the maternal side, and dad's side was not close by and did not play much of a role in those earlier childhood memories. But our aunt did. Then my dad got engaged and life changed fast. My dad's wife did not want our aunt around anymore. She wanted to become the mom, and she did not feel like my aunt would make that easy on her. So my dad and his fiance at the time moved us out of state, and we moved around a lot, so my aunt could not get any visitation rights to us. We did not get to see or speak to her at all after that. I know she fought for us. She did track us down a couple of times, and we moved again, and we missed her like crazy. And over the decade that followed, dad tried to erase all traces of our aunt and mom and attempted to create a little nuclear family with the 4 of us. But we hated him and we hated her. And when we were teenagers, we tracked down our aunt. When we turned 18 years old, we moved out of our dad's house and ended all contact with him. Now, my grandmother was aware of all of this, and when we were kids, she was understanding and did attempt to advocate for us to see our aunt. But once my dad found out I was getting married through a person who actually isn't invited to the wedding, but knew that I was engaged, he talked to my grandmother and he told her how badly he and his wife want to come and how sad they are that they've been removed so completely from our lives. Now, my grandmother is saying that they should be invited, or at least my father, because he is still my father. I told her it would not happen and refused to compromise with just him. So she's unhappy, and she said I'm taking things too far and I'm doing what they did, only I know how harmful it can be long term. So honestly, am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? You're definitely not the jerk here. Your grandmother does not know what she's talking about because she did not live through your childhood. Like, your dad literally tried to erase your aunt and your mom from your life and literally moved you around all over the place just to prevent you from seeing her her in any kind of way. That is highly inappropriate and so uncalled for. So no, you are definitely not the jerk, and I know if I was in your shoes, I would have done the exact same thing. Am I the jerk for making my wedding a child-free wedding, thus denying my nephew from attending my wedding? Because right now, my sister is calling me a jerk, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. So I'm a 24-year-old female, and I'm getting married in less than a month, and I want a child-free wedding. Now, I have always said this, and in the invitations, it says that it is child-free. Now, I have been to weddings where there are children, and some have screamed during the ceremony and the reception. In fact, I was at one where the kid didn't want to wait for the cake to be cut, so he snuck up and grabbed a handful. And trust me when I say this, the bride was horrified. Well, my sister has a 5-year-old, and she said she was happy to have some free time. Her boyfriend was going to stay behind the day of the wedding to be there with my nephew. I guess his friends rented out a cabin somewhere the week of my wedding, and he wants to go, so he doesn't want to, in his words, babysit that night. Now, I love my nephew a lot, but when things aren't about him, he will do anything to make it about him. She asked if I can make an exception and that she will keep him quiet, but I just don't trust her on this situation because my grandmother had her 80th birthday recently, and my sister made the same promise to our family that she would keep him calm. Well, he broke away from her and blew out our grandmother's candles and pushed the cake off when my dad tried to redirect him. She said she won't be able to find someone to watch him, and I said I would help her find someone, and she said she doesn't trust him with anyone. So I told her she needs to tell her boyfriend that it's not babysitting, and he said he would be there for her and her son during this night. Now, the venue has open water and a lot of open field. I also don't want him to get hurt because he loves to run around, and he always gets in trouble, and she rarely stops him. So I told her I'm sorry, but I can't. Well, she called me a jerk for inviting our cousin who turned 18 in December, and I told her she is an adult, and she can watch and take care of herself during the event. There will also be alcohol and other activities later in the night, and I don't want a child around for that. Our cousin is even leaving before we do other stuff. She'll only be at the reception for an hour or two. She says that she barely turned 18, and that I'm your sister and you can't even do this for me. So honestly, am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? Yeah, based on the way you've described your nephew, I don't blame you for not inviting them. Like, this kid pushed a birthday cake off the table and blew out the candles at their grandmother's birthday party. And in my opinion, that is a massive red flag that this kid will absolutely do the same thing at your wedding. Am I the jerk for asking my wife to earn a stable income? Because right now, I feel like we're sinking financially. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So I've been married to my wife for 15 years. We have 3 kids, ages 9, 11, and 14. Our dating period was a rapid 6 months before we were married, although we knew each other as friends for much longer. Her family communicated to me that we should waste no time, and she did as well. So I got the memo, and I eagerly played the part of Romeo. And trust me when I say this, it was easy. I was infatuated with my wife's beauty. I still think she looks physically stunning, and I like that she was a reader. In retrospect, I think I overlooked our values not aligning, but that's on me. Enamored as I was, I told her that I agreed that I would be the breadwinner and that she would be a stay-at-home mom, and I honestly thought I could do it. We were 29 years old, and I was completing my PhD degree. I took on extra teaching gigs and supported us financially as we lived in a small apartment. She wrote novels, and more kids arrived. I finished my degree and found a stable career at which I currently work. I've been solely supporting a family of 5 for at least 15 years, and I wouldn't mind doing it if the economy wasn't so bad. We bought a new place 2 years ago, and with inflation and my variable mortgage, I am losing sleep at night thinking where I can cut some of our expenditures and how we can stretch our budget. I make decent money, but we live in an expensive city, and I feel like our boat is taking on water, and I'm asking my wife to help me get some of this water out. We make ends meet living paycheck to paycheck, but an emergency would be disastrous. My wife works hard, but she works hard at jobs that she likes. She is a stay-at-home mom. Our youngest is nonverbal autistic, but goes to school full-time. She writes novels that bring home maybe a couple $100 a year, and she has recently started taking on dancing gigs. She is on a dance team that makes about $200 to $300 a month. She would earn more money and work less if she just used her teaching degree, which she is not using. She brings in practically nothing and expects me to man up and get extra teaching gigs. I'm doing that, but I'm also burning out, and I'm now wondering if I'm the jerk for asking my wife to use her skills and bring in more reliable income. She says being a stay-at-home mom is a full-time job and that I made a promise to her before we got married. She writes novels and calls this a career, which I admire, but I think it's also selfish. She earns next to nothing and would earn more if she just worked once a week a full day shift, which I could easily accommodate by taking on extra duties on days I don't work. I can't even bring this up with her, or else she's gonna accuse me of not appreciating or respecting her. Her line right now is that being a stay-at-home mom is a full-time job, and I agree that it definitely is work, but I already do all the groceries, drop the kids off at school, make some of the meals, and then some. I don't mind taking on more if she would just contribute something to the family's financial well-being. So honestly, am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? No, I don't think you're the jerk at all. I think your wife's being very selfish, and she's not looking at what's happening right now. Like, she's really holding it over your head when she's saying, oh, 15 years ago you said you would take care of the family. And it's like, yeah, but that was 15 years ago. Now we've got inflation and all this other stuff going on. Things have definitely changed since then. And in my opinion, that's just a really toxic excuse for her to stay at home and still do her same thing. And sure, writing novels and being a part of a dance team is not bad in and of itself, but picking up a well-paying job at a time like this really seems like the best move. And in my opinion, I don't think you're in the wrong for asking her to step up. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on in the background, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.